Gene Hackman has long been admired as one of Hollywood's most intense and demanding performers, a man who treated acting not as entertainment but as a discipline that required total commitment. For Hackman, every scene was a battlefield of focus, craft, and emotional precision, and he expected every actor beside him to approach the work with the same razor-sharp seriousness. That is why, when he arrived on the set of Get Shorty in 1995 and encountered John Travolta's famously effortless, charm-driven approach to acting, the tension began almost immediately. Hackman saw performance as something that had to be carved out with preparation and sweat, while Travolta floated through scenes with the relaxed confidence of a man who trusted his instincts more than his rehearsal time. To Hackman, this wasn't just a difference in style, it felt like disrespect for the art form he had spent decades defending with every fiber of his being. Crew members later recalled the subtle but unmistakable strain between them, Hackman tightening his jaw as Travolta laughed with extras, Hackman rereading his pages while Travolta improvised with casual ease. And although their conflict never erupted into a public blowout, the atmosphere on set was thick with unspoken frustration. Hackman delivered his role with trademark gravity, while Travolta cruised through his scenes with breezy confidence, two entirely different worlds forced together. The clash became an early entry on a long list of behind-the-scenes grudges that followed Hackman throughout his career, each born from the same thing: his belief that the craft deserved absolute seriousness, even when those around him chose a lighter, less disciplined path. The first warning sign appeared on day one, and it was so sharp that Gene Hackman immediately knew trouble was coming. After spending his entire weekend memorizing 8 dense pages of dialogue, pacing his living room, repeating lines until they felt carved into his bones, Hackman arrived on set expecting his co-star to have done the same. But John Travolta casually admitted he hadn't even tried. When Hackman mentioned he had spent the whole weekend preparing, Travolta just laughed and said, "That's a waste of a weekend." That single offhand line, tossed out with effortless charm, told Hackman everything he needed to know about the man he would be sharing the screen with for the next several months. From that moment, the tension didn't just build, it snowballed. Travolta frequently stumbled over lines, missed cues, and relied on giant cue cards that director Barry Sonnenfeld had to hold just off camera. For Hackman, who believed shortcuts were poison and vanity was the enemy of good acting, every one of those slip-ups felt like an attack on the craft itself. His anger grew so intense that he sometimes snapped at Sonnenfeld simply because exploding at Travolta would have derailed the entire production. Finally, after one particularly sharp outburst, Sonnenfeld sighed and said, "You're not mad at me, Gene. You're mad at John." And Hackman didn't deny it. Travolta didn't help his reputation. He occasionally arrived late, and once held up production simply to try on tuxedos for the Oscars. To Hackman, who despised Hollywood glamour, ego-driven indulgence, and anything that smelled like self-promotion, it was the ultimate insult. His patience grew so thin that when Travolta asked where they were supposed to begin a scene, Hackman dryly jabbed, "Right there, John. Top of your cue card." Travolta never recognized the sarcasm, he just nodded and moved on, and yet, Get Shorty became a hit. Travolta even walked away with a Golden Globe. But none of that softened Hackman. In his eyes, Travolta was a movie star pretending to be an actor, not an actor willing to suffer for the work. Number 2, John Wayne. Gene Hackman never went looking for conflict, but John Wayne left him no choice. Long before their paths could ever cross, the Duke had already formed a harsh opinion of Hackman, and he repeated it to anyone who would listen. According to Wayne's daughter, Isa, her father would go off on Hackman anytime he appeared on the screen. There was no critique, no thoughtful analysis, just pure dismissal. "Worst actor in town. He's awful." Wayne didn't just reject Hackman's performances, he rejected Hackman's entire identity as an actor. Hackman never fired back publicly, but the words hit him hard. He believed acting demanded emotional truth, intense preparation, and the willingness to disappear completely into a character, traits Wayne rarely embraced, relying instead on his larger-than-life persona and traditional Hollywood heroism. Insiders later said Hackman quietly concluded that Wayne's bitterness was rooted in insecurity disguised as authority, especially considering Wayne's reliance on roles built around simple moral binaries and patriotic myth-making. The strangest part? They never even met. Their feud existed from afar, Wayne attacking from a distance, Hackman responding with silence until silence became its own answer. By the time Hackman's career soared with films like Unforgiven, Hoosiers, and the Royal Tenenbaums, Wayne was long gone. Even Isa admitted her father might have changed his mind had he lived to see Hackman's greatest work. But reconciliation never came. No handshake, no conversation, not even a quiet message passed through Hollywood circles. Wayne's hostility didn't slow Hackman for a second. If anything, it solidified the divide between old Hollywood mythmaking and the new era of raw, disciplined, transformative acting, and Hackman made it clear which world he belonged to. Number 3, Denzel Washington. Ready when you are, Gene Hackman never feared competition, he thrived on it. But when he stepped onto the set of Crimson Tide, he encountered the one co-star who refused to back down, bend, or defer to his authority. Denzel Washington didn't just meet Hackman's intensity, he mirrored it, matched it, and then pushed it right back at him. Suddenly, every scene between them felt less like a performance and more like a collision, a duel between two actors who understood that yielding even an inch meant surrendering the psychological high ground from day one. The contrast was combustible. Hackman arrived like a field commander, lines memorized to the syllable, emotional beats charted with military precision, every moment sharpened through repetition. Washington, by contrast, embodied a different kind of fire, instinctive, fluid, unpredictable, bringing an energy that shifted from quiet calculation to explosive force without warning. Hackman viewed that looseness as a challenge. Washington saw Hackman's rigidity as an invitation. And in the space between those two methods, a real power struggle began to simmer. Washington later admitted he never once felt intimidated. "I don't think I've been intimidated by another actor," he said. "This is my arena. Whoever walks in the gym, let's go at it." He respected Hackman as one of the greats, but respect didn't mean surrender. If anything, it sharpened him. Rehearsals turned into sparring sessions, two heavyweights circling each other, each determined not to let the other dictate the rhythm. Witnesses on set described it as controlled combat, Hackman pressing forward with structure, Washington firing back with instinct, neither man willing to settle for second place in a single frame. Privately, insiders said Hackman admired Washington's talent more than he let on, even if he resented the pushback. Hackman believed scenes worked best when one actor led and the other followed. Washington refused to be either. He kept shifting the balance, disrupting any hierarchy Hackman tried to establish. Though the friction never erupted into a public feud, it created a charge so intense that once filming wrapped, neither actor pursued a second collaboration. The experience was unforgettable but exhausting, yet the tension between them became the heart of Crimson Tide. Their clashes didn't weaken the film, they electrified it. The movie pulsed with their real-life struggle for dominance, creating one of the most riveting two-man showdowns Hollywood has ever captured. Washington walked away impressed, energized, and satisfied. Hackman walked away drained, fully aware he had just faced one of the few actors capable of standing toe-to-toe with him without blinking. For Hackman, Crimson Tide proved that some actors don't step into the arena to participate, they enter to take control. For Washington, it was simple: if you're in his gym, you'd better be prepared to fight for every inch of the frame. Number 4, Lois Lane. Gene Hackman walked into Superman, 1978, with the same iron discipline that defined his entire career. To him, playing Lex Luthor wasn't the typical comic book villain assignment, it was a strategic operation. Every line was drilled into memory, every gesture rehearsed in the mirror, every vocal inflection considered with the precision of a man preparing for battle. Hackman played Luthor like a general plotting a psychological war. But standing across from him was Margot Kidder, whose Lois Lane was built from pure spontaneity, electric, playful, and unpredictable. And from the moment cameras rolled, their styles clashed like flint striking steel. Kidder brought a mischievous, free-spirited energy to set. She cracked jokes between takes, improvised lines on the spot, and treated the production's long days with an almost chaotic sense of fun. Hackman, buried deep inside Lex Luthor's icy menace, had no patience for it. Crew members recalled more than one occasion when he muttered under his breath, "Some of us are trying to make a movie here," after Kidder's spontaneity broke his rhythm. What she considered looseness and creativity, Hackman viewed as interference, disruptive, undisciplined, and disrespectful to the craft he guarded so fiercely. But Kidder didn't bend. She refused to apologize for her energy. To her, Hackman's seriousness wasn't admirable, it was suffocating. At one point, she quietly told a colleague, "He's so deep into Luthor he forgets the rest of us are allowed to breathe." Their temperaments couldn't have been more different. Hackman demanded control, order, and focus, while Kidder needed freedom, experimentation, and emotional looseness. Their scenes carried that tension, charged, sharp-edged, alive. Lex Luthor and Lois Lane were narrative adversaries, but behind the camera their opposing approaches created a second, unspoken duel. Still, beneath the friction, glimmers of respect broke through. Hackman later admitted she had razor-sharp instincts and a natural screen presence impossible to fake. Kidder, for her part, called him a force and one of the greatest actors she ever stood opposite, but despite the professional admiration, they never grew close. Their worlds, both on set and off, simply operated by different rules. When the Superman films ended, they walked away with the same silent understanding. Their chemistry was powerful but volatile, their styles incompatible, and the friction between them was as inevitable as the roles they played. Lois Lane and Lex Luthor, forever locked on opposite ends of the creative spectrum. Number 5, Richard Harris. Gene Hackman rarely let anything get under his skin. He could handle ego, laziness, unprofessionalism, he'd seen it all. But being forgotten? That cut deeper than any argument ever could. Hackman spent his career honoring the people he worked with. He remembered the long shoots, the late-night rewrites, the bruises from stunt work, the unspoken bond actors form when they survive a difficult film together. So when he walked onto the set of Unforgiven and Richard Harris greeted him with the blank politeness reserved for a total stranger, it hit him harder than anyone realized. Harris had no memory whatsoever of their earlier film together. To Hackman, that wasn't a simple lapse, it felt like dismissal, like a man erasing history Hackman believed mattered. "We were in the trenches," Hackman muttered later, frustration simmering just beneath the surface, "and he acts like we've never met." Harris's forgetfulness wasn't malicious, it was just who he was: scattered, impulsive, living entirely in the present. But Hackman didn't see it that way. He interpreted it as disrespect, and he held that quiet, coiled anger all the way to the camera. And then came the legendary beating scene in Unforgiven. Hackman's character, Little Bill, savagely assaults Harris's English Bob. The scene is meant to be brutal, humiliating, a display of raw power. But crew members swear Hackman entered that moment with a ferocity that went far beyond the script's instructions. Each blow felt sharper, each shove harder, each glare charged with something deeply personal. The choreography was safe. Hackman was too professional to actually injure anyone, but the emotional energy behind the performance was unmistakable. Harris himself joked afterward, "Gene hit like a man who meant it," admitting that the scene felt as if it had extra seasoning. But behind the humor, he sensed something real, the kind of heat only an unresolved slight can ignite. The two men never talked about it. Hackman never explained. Harris never apologized or even realized how deeply the forgetfulness had landed. When filming wrapped, they were cordial, distant, and fundamentally finished with each other. No argument, no reconciliation, no emotional clearing of the air, just two towering talents drifting apart with something unsaid locked between them. Harris died in 2002. Hackman retired not long after. And what remains is that unforgettable beating in Unforgiven, a moment of cinematic violence that carried a quiet truth neither of them ever spoke aloud. Number 6, Liza Minnelli. Some Hollywood conflicts grow from ego, but the tension between Gene Hackman and Liza Minnelli came from something far more elemental. They existed in completely different emotional universes. Hackman approached every film set as if it were a monastery, quiet, focused, sacred. Work was discipline. Work was precision. Work was the craft. Minnelli, meanwhile, carried Broadway in her bloodstream. She brought warmth, music, chatter, and unpredictability into every room she entered. On the set of Lucky Lady, 1975, those two worlds didn't just brush up against each other, they detonated. The production trapped the cast on a cramped boat off the coast of Mexico, in brutal heat with long hours and almost no personal space. Hackman arrived razor-focused, locked into his character, refusing to let discomfort break his concentration. Minnelli countered the oppressive conditions with laughter, singing, jokes, and bursts of optimism meant to keep spirits alive. What she saw as emotional oxygen, Hackman experienced as noise, pure, chaotic, intrusive noise. Burt Reynolds, the third star caught between them, later recalled Hackman losing his patience again and again until one day he snapped, "Liza, shut the F*** up." It happened so often that crew members learned to simply walk away and wait for Hackman to cool down, giving him space so the filming day wouldn't implode. Minnelli, fragile beneath her talent and bravado, took every sharp remark as a wound. One harsh line from Hackman could break her smile and silence her for hours. The relentless heat, the confined quarters, and their violently incompatible working styles pushed their dynamic past the point of recovery. By the time filming wrapped,
the relationship was more than strained, it was irrevocably broken.
Critics later noted the film's flat chemistry, the odd emotional distance between characters who were meant to spark, and the muddled tone.
The box office reflected the disconnect.
The movie slipped into history as a misfire, and many involved privately blamed the fractured energy at its core. Hackman moved on to some of the greatest work of his career.
Minnelli's film trajectory faltered, never regaining the momentum Cabaret had given her.
And the two never shared reconciliation, understanding, or even a softened memory of their time together.
For Hackman, Minnelli was a distraction from the work.
For Minnelli, Hackman was a force who drained joy from the process she loved. Their feud didn't end with a dramatic showdown, it ended with distance, silence, and a cold finality neither ever attempted to warm. Number 7. Wes Anderson. Gene Hackman was never known for his patience, and the Royal Tenenbaums proved exactly how thin that patience could stretch before snapping. From the moment he learned he'd be directed by 32-year-old Wes Anderson, an eccentric filmmaker half his age with a pastel-bathed, meticulously symmetrical vision, the tension was almost guaranteed.
Hackman never even wanted the role in the first place.
Anderson practically chased him across Hollywood, begging, pleading, persuading until Hackman reluctantly agreed. By the time he stepped onto the set, he was already annoyed by the salary, by the script, by the entire aesthetic universe he was being dragged into, and once the cameras rolled, the clash became inevitable. Anderson's filmmaking style required rigid blocking, mathematical compositions, and frame-perfect performances.
Hackman's instincts, forged over decades of gritty, grounded work, rebelled against that precision.
He was a force of nature, raw, volcanic, unpredictable. Anderson was a watchmaker, delicate, structured, controlling. Their methods collided with the force of two planets on a collision course. Stories from the set spread quickly. Hackman barking, "Pull up your pants and act like a man," at Anderson.
Hackman reportedly calling him a C******. Hackman's sharp tone reducing Angelica Houston to tears.
And through it all, Bill Murray, who wasn't even in most of those scenes, showing up on his days off simply to shield the young director from Hackman's storms. Cast and crew adored Anderson, but they were terrified of Hackman's sudden flashes of anger and uncompromising demands. Anderson later spoke about the experience with disarming honesty. "I was probably too young, and it was annoying to him." He admitted he didn't enjoy the experience, that the tension nearly swallowed the production whole.
Hackman, on his side, later confessed he didn't even understand the film while he was making it.
The pastel world, the dry humor, the off-kilter melancholy, it all felt suffocating to a man who came from the school of grit and welded steel realism. To Anderson, Hackman was a storm he had no choice but to weather. To Hackman, Anderson was a soft-spoken conductor trying to force a hurricane to move in straight lines. When filming ended, Hackman simply walked off.
No handshake. No rap speech. No warmth.
Not even a casual good luck.
It was the final moment the two ever shared, and with that, the book closed on one of Hollywood's most unforgettable generational collisions. In the end, these 7 clashes didn't just reveal Hackman's temper, they revealed his essence. Brilliant. Uncompromising. Fiercely protective of the craft he believed in.
His feuds weren't random explosions, they were the price of working with a man who demanded total devotion not just from himself, but from everyone around him. But were these battles proof of artistic integrity, or evidence of bridges burned too quickly? Tell us what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Untold Hollywood stories.